Let's talk about notable New Mexico women. It's part of the New Mexico Historic Women Marker Program, celebrating New Mexico's trailblazing women. This is a group of maybe 10 years old that realized that among hundreds of historic markers around the state, almost none featured women, so they set out to change that. And these women are listed, many here, but some of them are not here, and I'm also researched these other women, and I'm going to be showing you both ones that have markers and ones that don't. So let's start. There's Debbie La Chicanita Martinez, who was a pioneer in integrating and getting women's roles in Mexican Tex-Mex music. And you can see there's one of the markers, and this is one of the ceremonies in which these markers, when they're finally put up, there's a little ceremony for them. Women have been making their mark in the Americas and in New Mexico for 22,000 years. These are footprints that are discovered. They're the oldest footprints known in the Americas, and it seems to be a mother and a child. The not far from White Sands in the Sacramento Mountains are the Mescalero Apaches, and here's a male bringing an animal in from the hunt, and you can see the woman there is processing the Mescalero agaves, which are a very important part of their diet in the old days, and you can see she's taking also care of a child. So women had roles that were back at camp, and the men were out hunting. And of course, if a woman had a baby, she couldn't be out on the hunt anyway. And then the Comanche women were working on cleaning the hides and curing the hides of the buffalo that the men hunted. The women had this huge role of preparing very hard work to get the hides that were a big part of the trade items for the Comanche and the Plains Indians. And then you have the Pueblo corn farmers, and you have the Zuni farmers. These are the famous waffle gardens. And the Navajo women doing the sheep herding. And then you also have the Genizaros. These are native people who got separated from their tribes, and many times they were enslaved, or they certainly were not treated well. And then, of course, there were other, mostly girls, who were captured. These could be Anglo girls, Native American girls, Hispanic girls that were traded around and not treated well in our history. Not a thing in our history. There's the Historic Women of New Mexico mural down in the Bareilles part of South Albuquerque. Here is the only place in America, in the state, one of the only places in the state that is named for a female. This was named for Frances Folsom. Folsom was named for Frances Folsom, the President Grover Cleveland's fiancee, but it really should be named for Sally Rook, who was a hero of Folsom. She stayed at her switchboard warning people of danger of floods, and she died there. Another shero of our state is this woman, Isabel de Oliveira. She was a servant of a Spanish family that were planning to move to New Mexico, and she wanted to have her rights as a free, independent mulatto woman certified, and there she is talking to the mayor of the town in Mexico. And one of the earliest records of activism shown by an African American woman in North America. She was actually African Mexican. Then you have Elena Gallegos, who was a really powerful woman at the time in the early part of the settlement of New Mexico. And here's the founding women of Albuquerque, a list of them. Josefa Baca was another founding member of the Bernalillo, and she developed this whole ranch, and a very important person, and many generations from her. Here's Juliana Gutierrez. She married Chavez Hubble, and this was a marriage of the Anglos and the Hispanics, very important. And of course, you have the Gutierrez Hubble house, and a wonderful historic ranch and trading post in the South Valley. Cleofas Martinez Jaramillo, she was an aristocrat in northern New Mexico, and she was concerned about preserving the history of the Hispanics in northern New Mexico. She wrote a lot of interesting books, including the first recipe book, New Mexico Tasting Recipes. And And then there's Fabiola Cabeza de Baca Gilbert. She was a home ec person who traveled around the state helping women mostly be better food preparers and all that. She's the first person to put in print the hard and soft tacos. Her book, We Fed Them Cactus, is a fabulous book talking about the area of eastern New Mexico. And then you have Helene Hack Allen, who was helped preserve the place where the Navajos were incarcerated, the Bosque Redondo Memorial Museum. She was very influential in getting this started. You can see this a modern facility now, and the Navajos were brought over there, tried to teach them farming, but many of them died. It was a disaster, and they finally decided, the American government finally let them go, and here they are seeing for the first time their sacred lands and crossing the Rio Grande. Then there's Mrs. Margreta Stewart Dietrich, who was a wealthy woman from Philadelphia who was very influential in preserving the old ranch houses in Canyon Road, Santa Fe. Here's Olive Rush, also a Philadelphian, an artist who also helped preserve those old farmhouses and keep Canyon Road the way it was. And both of these women were very influential and involved in preserving and helping Native rights. Two other women, also wealthy folks from the East, Amelia Elizabeth White and Mabel Dodge Lujan. Both of them came west, settled in Taos, and for Lujan and White settled in Santa Fe. Very important and also in working to preserve and enhance Native American rights. Then you have Ruth Hannah McCormick Sims. She was a U.S. Senator, a wealthy woman from Chicago who married a wealthy New Mexico guy, Albert Sims, and they preserved Los Poblanos, a very historic farm in the North Valley, and she became very interested in upgrading the dairy cows of and herds in New Mexico. A great story and an interesting woman. Marietta Wetherill. She and her husband helped save Chaco Canyon. And then you have, of course, Mary Cabot Wheelwright, who saved Los Luceros, one of the most important historic ranches and farms in northern New Mexico. It's a great place. Everybody should visit there. And her farm manager was Maria Chabot. Maria Chabot was born in Mexico. She was an expert in collecting Native American art, and the two of them teamed up. Maria Chabot was her farm manager. She was the first woman to head a ditch cleaning committee, and just a great combination. Maria went on to work also with George O'Keeffe. Then you have Eve Ball, who lived down in the Mescalero Apache area in Ruidoso, and she was interviewing some of these old-timers, the old-time Apache guys, and wrote several books about them, and she preserved a very important history. Then you have the women of Shakespeare. Shakespeare is a southwest stop on the stagecoach, and this was a dying ghost town, and these three women helped preserve it, and it's now a National Historic Site. Then you have these women who helped preserve Los Golondrinas, which is a very important Spanish colonial ranch, and last place on the Camino Real, and the first place was going south. And you have Alabama Milner in the 20s and 30s. Her photographs help preserve and understand the rise of downtown Albuquerque, and she took lots of photos of the workers and the people, and a very important preservation that she did. Ada McPherson Morley, one of my favorites. She ran a ranch out in the west central part of the state. She worked tirelessly for women's rights. She opposed all the corruption in Santa Fe. She worked for suffrage. She formed the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. She went blind, but she continued to write letters and walk several miles to the nearest post. Then you have Lola Chavez de Armijo, who was a librarian, but the state said she couldn't be a librarian because she was a woman, and so she fought for that, and she got her rights back. There's several other women who fought for their rights in politics and in state government, and they're all in this historic marker program. Nina Otero Warren, she even has her own coin because she worked also for suffrage movement and educator, and the first woman, the first Latina to run for Congress. And Dolores Huerta, she's been in the news recently. She was the one who really got the farm workers all their boycotts. She led the great boycott in New York City. She was the person behind all of the efforts that she's from New Mexico, but she was raised in California, where she met up with Cesar Chavez, and basically he was the front man, and he's now become greatly discredited. But basically all along it was Dolores Huerta and the women who were doing the farm workers movement. Alice Hobbs, she did so much to advance African Americans' rights in Albuquerque. There was redlining, there was all sorts of issues, and she was tireless, among others, in doing this. And the African American Pavilion at the State Fair is named for her. Here's one of my favorites. This is Mother Julian. She ran an inn in Capitan in Lincoln County, most known for home of Smokey the Bear, but she ran this inn, and she was from, I think, Iowa or Kansas or Missouri, one of those places, but she came here, started this inn, and she would take in the children so that the parents could go once a month to the dances, the community dances, and it's just a great story. She fed all these cowboys and the people, the ranchers in this community, and one time her drunken husband was asking for money and was a no good guy, and she threatened him with a frying pan. I think she even hit him over the frying pan because she said, "Don't wake the babies." She was taking care of the babies that night, and he left, and she never saw him again. And you have Doña Tulis. She ran a successful gambling house in Santa Fe, and she was friends with the Mexican governor, and then when the U.S. took over, she was friends with the U.S. governor. And when the soldiers were stationed in Santa Fe weren't getting paid, she bankrolled them. Of course, a lot of the money then went back to her gambling saloon. So it's just a great story. Then there is Yetta Cohn, who was born in Germany, married a German guy, came over here, he died, and she started ranches. She started businesses. She operated a post office. There's the story, the things that she accomplished in the eastern part of the state is remarkable. Down around Santa Rosa, that area. Sadie Orchard, also an Easterner, or I think a Midwesterner, came. She ran her own stagecoach company, restaurants, hotels, and she gave a lot of women work. Erna Ferguson told her, for a bad woman, Sadie was one of the best. It's a great story. Then you have Susan McSween Barber, the cattle queen in New Mexico. Her husband was involved in the Lincoln County War, and he died, and she took over the ranch and was a very successful businesswoman and a rancher. The Harvey girls saved the Fred Harvey Company when he started. Instead of hiring men, he started to decide to hire all these women on these restaurants and hotels along the Santa Fe Railroad, and turned the company around. And a lot of these women stayed. They were from the East. They were recruited from the Midwest, and they stayed and started families. And a very important part of changing the cultural landscape of the Wild West. Mary Jane Coulter, she was the chief architect of the Fred Harvey Company restaurants and hotels. It cannot understate how successful this woman was in a completely man's world of architects. Then there's Carol Bishop Stanley. She was a wealthy woman from Boston, and her parents did not like her hanging around with this musician, so they sent her out west on a dude ranch kind of thing. And she fell in love with a cowboy who was a gambler, and they ran a successful ranch for a while in up near Los Luceros in the northern part of the state, and then they had a falling out, but he won in a poker game what became Ghost Ranch, and he gave her the property, and she developed Ghost Ranch into a celebrity hangout. And then, of course, the history is well known from there. Mary Swopes was a woman who was involved in the early days of the wildcatting in Artesia in the southeast, and it was Mary who decided this is the spot. After they had many unsuccessful drilling efforts, this was the spot to drill, and the history is that this was the first and the best oil rig, and this is an Artesia statue of her and a statue of the rig. Then up in Los Alamos, you have Dorothy McKibben in Santa Fe. She was the gatekeeper for all the people that were coming in and out of to the secret city. Edith Warner ran her tea room and was the Oppenheimer crowd hung out down there with her. And then the Atomic Women, untold stories of the scientists who helped create the nuclear bomb. I love Josephine Gallegos, who ran a store in Villanueva. If you haven't been in Villanueva, it's a wonderful place out of the way on the eastern part of the state. Kathy Knapp from Michigan saved Pie Town. And these three women, Cynthia Williams, Bertha Dutton, and Florence Hawley Ellis, were important early women in the archaeology movement, and they had a huge influence in bringing women into the field. You had Hattie Cosgrove and her husband were the principal researchers and preservers of the Mimbres pottery. Here's Ida Jackson, who started schools in the eastern part of the state. Very important, one of the very important educators, black educators in the state. And Susan Shelby McGuffin, she wrote about coming down on the Santa Fe Trail. This woman wrote No Life for a Lady. She grew up on that ranch with her mother, Ada McPherson. And then you have Erna Ferguson, who was born wealthy family in Albuquerque, and she went on to write all sorts of books about Mexican food and the Southwest, and she ran her own travel agency. Then there's Peggy Pond Church, who wrote about the final days of the Los Alamos Ranch School before it was converted into the Los Alamos Bomb Factory. One of our great poets. And another woman, this is Esther May, who wrote about the history of Cuba before the war, and a very interesting preservationist and historian. And of course, very famous Maria Montoya Martinez, Roxelle Svensel, and Pablita Velarde, three very important internationally known artists. And Phyllis Hogue, a friend of mine, she was the poet laureate of Hawaii, working at the University of Hawaii, but she gave it all up and moved to Mogollon, a ghost town, and up in the mountains over in the Mogollon Range, and wrote a book about it. And then there's another friend of mine, Bertha Allen, who ran a school in a very remote part of Northwest in the Navajo lands, and on Largo Canyon. And the kids were the kids of sheep herders and oil workers, and yeah, I guess that's it. Lucy Lippard, internationally famous art critic, but she wrote one of my favorite books, Down Country, about the Galisteo Basin. There's Judy Chicago with her women's dinner table, and there's like 1,300 women, notable women from around the world who are listed in that. The Salt of the Earth women. The men were on strike at in a mine down in the Southwest, and they couldn't picket or anything, or they'd be fired. So the women took this up, and the women did all of the work to get. And they made a movie out of this, and then they thought it was too communistic, and it was blacklisted. Then you have the women of Rio Puerco Valley, a significant community of Hispanics in the Rio Puerco Valley when it had water and when it had grazing lands. It was overgrazed and the water dried up and they had to move away. It's just a interesting story about a community that's no longer there. And you can see the New Mexico stamp showed the Rio Puerco Valley. The Women of Manhattan Project, these are the domestics. They were brought in every day. They did all the dirty work, all the hard work, got no credit for it. And then the Navajo women who did all the carrot farming. Grants and Milan used to be the carrot capital of the United States, and these women did all this work. And you can see on the village hall on the left, showing these women there, and on the right the harvest. And then you have Louise Massey Maybe. We started with a Hispanic woman singer, and we're ending with one of the female radio stars, the original Rhinestone Cowgirl. So thanks for joining us for the notable women of New Mexico, and we'll see you next time. And go on that site and check out all the others.